received from DPS support all of our work, but specifically are what allow us to provide emergency shelter, provide legal advocacy to victims of violence, and respond to calls to accompany sexual assault victims during SART exams, among other advocacy services. Thank you to the subcommittee for recognizing the critical nature of the services in our state and in Sitka.
Thank you, Ms. Mahoney. We appreciate your testimony and we appreciate what you do for Alaskans. Next up in Ketchikan, we have Bob Silverstein. If you could state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Finance Committee members, and thanks for the opportunity to testify today. I'm Bob Severson, and I serve on the Alaska Commission on Aging. I would like to support the House HEF Subcommittee's recommendation to add the intended language to HB 281 and HB 282 that would increase funding to the grants for home and community-based services. The senior population in Alaska has increased by 51% over the last 10 years, and the cost of living has increased north of 20% in the same time frame. While the Division of Senior and Disability Services grant program has been, for the most part, flat funded. Without additional funding, providers will be asked to do less with less and fall behind in the state's attempt to provide seniors and those with the most complex medical and social needs basic necessary services. We're not keeping up, we're falling behind. The proposed general fund funding will support services including meals, transportation, homemaking, family caregiver, safety and protection, plus a lot more. Seniors are living longer. The population 80 and older, who often require the most support to live independently, will almost triple over the next 25 years. Keeping our seniors and those with complex health issues home is the cheapest option for care the state can invest in. Your support and investment can help to provide a higher quality of life for seniors and elders to avoid costs associated with preventable circumstances such as falls, poor nutrition, inactivity, or medical errors. I'd like to thank you for your service to the state of Alaska, and thank you.
Thank you very much. We have a question or comment from Representative Ortiz.
Hey, good to hear you today, Bob. Thanks for coming in and advocating on a worthy cause like you always do. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. We have Janet Bauer next in Seward, the city manager. Ms. Bauer, if you could state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Jeanette Bauer from the City of Seward. I'm the city manager. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. This afternoon, I'm focusing on the amendment to increase jail funding. The city sincerely thanks the subcommittee for bringing forth the amendment to add an additional $4 million to fund the jails and for your consideration of the amendment. I'd like to note that while the jails are referenced as community jails, in all reality, the jails are state jails operated for the state by the municipalities. The jail located in and operated by the City of Seward is a 14-bed temporary detention facility that operates under the state contract 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. The detainees are not just those arrested by the Seward Police Department, but from the troopers as well. The city has been underfunded for many years. In 2021, we were underfunded by 44%, and in 2022, we are underfunded by 47%. The city has demonstrated our willingness to be a good partner. We completely understand that if the city were to no longer operate the jail, which we have the legal ability to stop doing so, the burden would rest entirely on the state. We understand Department of Corrections and the troopers would be greatly affected, and we do not wish to further burden those departments. We do, however, wish to be funded and for our Seward city residents to no longer make up the funding deficit for the state jail located and operated by the City of Seward. I encourage you to pass the amendment, and I thank you for your time and all that you do for Alaska. I know how difficult it is to balance a municipal budget. I can only imagine how difficult it is for the state budget. Thank you for all that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Bauer. We appreciate you calling today. I see no questions. We will move to Pat Branson, the mayor of Kodiak. Please state your name, affiliation, and begin your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you, Representative Foster and members of the Finance Committee for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Pat Branson. I'm the mayor of the city of Kodiak, and my comments specifically address the support for funding regional and community jails program and the Alaska Marine Highway operations. The City of Kodiak supports a subcommittee's addition of $4 million into the operating budget to increase funding for the regional and community jail and pretrial services programs under the Department of Corrections. City of Kodiak has had an approved jail services contract with the department since 1960, and 2 years ago added new pretrial services. The city's willingness to operate a jail undoubtedly saves both the Department of Public Safety and Department of Corrections a tremendous amount of money. The city's cost to operate the jail was underfunded and had a deficit of almost $200,000 for the fiscal year 2021. The Kodiak Community Jail is an integral part of our overall public safety in Kodiak. The jail provides a secure detention facility for Kodiak Island road system. It offers a regional solution that supports 6 villages spread out across 3,500 square miles. And additionally, the jail supports a local criminal justice system, which is comprised of many state services, including Superior and District Court, District Attorney, Public Defender, Alaska State Troopers, Juvenile Justice, Adult Probation, and Office of Children's Services. Also, the city supports full funding for the Alaska Marine Highway system. The ferry system provides a way for a variety of things to happen in Kodiak, including buying vehicles, building supplies, large construction projects, and importantly, the U.S. Coast Guard transfers about 1/3 of the personnel in and off the island each summer season. The Kodiak Ferry Terminal estimates that over 75% of the folks that do transfer each year use the ferry system as part of their move. So on behalf of the residents of the City of Kodiak, I appreciate your consideration on these views, as well as we fully support community assistance. And on my personal views, I fully support public radio as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will say that Representative LeBon and I traveled together to your city, and we had a wonderful time. It was absolutely beautiful, so we appreciate your hospitality. Next, in Ketchikan, we have Grant Echohawk with Wish. If you could state your name, affiliation, and please begin your 2-minute testimony.
Yes, my name is Grant Echohawk, calling on behalf of Wish, formerly known as Women in Safe Homes, but it's now known simply as Wish as we become more gender inclusive. I wanted to speak about first, thank the committee for all the hard work in moving these funds over to important community programs. The one that I'm really focused on and I wanted to speak to is our domestic violence and sexual assault programs. Any community, any additional community funding that can be involved with prevention, addressing intimate partner violence, and whatever. In addition to that, any kind of substance abuse or substance use disorder, preventative measures is absolutely vital. When we can get out into the community, when we can support our community with these programs, it reduces everything from drug substance use, reduces the amount of crime we have in our communities, reduces high school dropouts, and it really gives our community the opportunity to prosper and grow by investing as much as we can into these programs. So I'm just really advocating to continue to support these programs, continue to move as much of our funding as we can into prevention, so we can support all of the various programs, not only that WISH has, but all throughout all of our communities, to ensure that our communities are safe, ensure that the folks that live in our communities know that they're getting the support that they need, and they have places to go when they do need the support. As I've seen firsthand throughout my own community, folks that have needed just a little bit of help and were able to get it through the various nonprofits that rely on the funding. So I again thank you for your service, and thank you for keeping an eye on the budget and for offering these funding options for our various nonprofits. They always go to good use, and our communities only benefit from them. And then on a personal note, personally, I also support public radio. I think that is also a vital community asset, and as well, keeping a robust Alaska Marine Highway system is also very important, so our communities can have the ability to grow economically as we are able to transport people and goods between our various communities here in Southeast Alaska.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Representative Ortiz.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Hey, thank you, Grant, for taking the time to having your voice be heard here this afternoon on a very worthy cause. Appreciate it very much.
Okay, and next up here in the room, we have Noah Williams. If you'd like to come up and state your name and your affiliation, if you're for yourself or with an organization.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, representatives of the committee. My name is Noah Williams. I am here from District 33, representing myself. I'll keep my testimony very short today. I'd like to echo the sentiments expressed about public radio, especially with regard to their safety implications for communities. I suspect if you brought Grace Elliott in here, she'd have a more eloquent representation of that as well. But primarily, I'd like to ask that consideration be given to the needs of communities that rely on the ferry system. The Alaska Marine Highway system was a quite significant staple of my experience growing up around Southeast Alaska, traveling around as a student, and the fact that it is gutted, that we see these ferries smashed in disrepair or decommissioned and about to be scuttled without replacement is distressing, and I believe that it is vitally important that they be replaced and that the system be restored to its full working order. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. Williams. I don't see any questions of the committee. So next we'll move over to Tom Bryce here in the room. And Mr. Bryce, if you can state your name and your affiliation and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
There we go. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. My name's Tom Bryce. I am here to express my appreciation to the subcommittee and hope the full committee will take the actions of the University of Alaska Budget Subcommittee. Appreciate the increase in the accepting of the Board of Regents numbers. That's a big deal. After 3 years of extreme austerity, it's time that we start investing in our future and start building an institution that will help generate the jobs for our state's future. Particularly of interest, I found real exciting was the additional appropriation to the School of Medicine at UAA. And for a Nanook to say something good for a Seawolf, you know, that's kind of an unusual deal. And then Representative LeBon, don't think that we didn't see that mariculture effort, which is, you know, the blue economy and the potential there. And that's big for our state, as we all know. Anyway, thank you for all the work you folks have done on that, and encourage you to continue to support it. Thank you very much.
Representative LeBon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, former Representative Bryce, for your service to our state. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Take care, guys.
Representative Wool.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I must also say thank you, Mr. Bryce, a former Fairbanks resident, now resident of Juneau. And when I went to UAF, my class president was Mr. Tom Bryce.
There you go.
I had hair then, yes.
So did I, Tom.
Yeah, I remember. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you. Okay, and next up we have Suzanne Vuile Smith. If you can state your name and your affiliation and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Yes, thank you all for your time. My name is Suzanne V.A. Smith, and I'm calling from Haines. And I'm here to represent KHNS Radio, Lynn Canal Broadcasting, and express my support for the state really needing to fund public radio. As so many others have stated, we've received no state funding for 3 years. This is a rural station, but we represent 3 very different communities, Haines, Skagway, and the village of Cluckwan. I have worked for many years in emergency services on the ambulance crew, and I guess my most important thing to say about public radio in Alaska is that when climate disasters hit, which they do, and they are hitting us with increasing frequency, our public radio stations keep us informed. Recently, a little bit more than a year ago, we had a devastating landslide up here in December. Many areas of Haines were evacuated, including my own home. And when people are evacuated and panicked and their roads are crumbling, their homes are crumbling, the only thing that held us together was listening to our mayor, to the Emergency Operations Committee. Every day, 7 a.m., noon, 6 p.m., we would receive updates. The staff at KHNS slept at the station to ensure their own safety and to keep things going. And it is still through our public radio stations that we are being assisted with recovery. There's so many things that public radio does in this state. I think the number one issue we have is communication, transportation. Without public radio, we cannot communicate with each other between communities to what's going on in the state capitol, to what's going on in the world, what's going on in the state.
I'm sorry, Ms. VA?
The price of oil is skyrocketing now, and I think it's a chance to get that funding back in so we can access the funds we need. Many of our stations cannot access federal funding if we don't have state funding. We're all working very hard. Our pandemic monies have been well used and well spent, but they are gone now.
Ms. VA Smith, if you could please wrap up.
I thank you all for considering this, and thank you for the job you do.
Great, thank you. I don't see any questions from the committee. Thank you for your testimony. We'll move over to Jessica Whitaker. If you can state your name, your affiliation. I see you're calling from Wrangell.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Jessica Whitaker. I work for Southeast Alaska Regional Health Consortium in the Behavioral Health Division, and I am physically located in Wrangell, Alaska. I am calling today to express support of the proposed increased funding to the Behavioral Health Grants Program. Search is a current recipient of the Comprehensive Behavioral Health Treatment and Recovery Grant and depends on these funds to help support the cost of providing local psychiatric emergency service response in many of our rural communities in Southeast, which covers nearly the entirety of Southeast, all the way from Cluckwan down to southern Prince of Wales Island. Many times we are the only provider in these communities, and the funding helps support the cost of running these programs in rural Alaska. The funding also helps support the cost of providing these services to patients who are not eligible or enrolled in the state-funded Medicaid program. I want to wrap up by thanking everybody for the work that they have done on this budget and for your time in listening to me speak today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. I don't see any questions. For folks who, just a reminder, if you'd like to submit your testimony in writing, you can do so by sending an email to house.finance@akleg.gov. And same goes for folks who are calling in to testify if you've got more that you'd like to convey to the committee but you time out, please do send us your testimony in writing as well. And again, that email address is house.finance@akleg.gov. So next up, we have Tina Russell calling from Valdez. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for taking testimony on this budget this afternoon. My name is Tina Marie Russell. I'm from Valdez and representing Advocates for Victims of Violence. I'm the Direct Service Coordinator. And I want to thank everybody at the budget subcommittees for recognizing the crucial nature of services for victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. Funding provided through the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault allows us to provide emergency shelter and an array of wraparound services for victims, survivors in the Valdez and surrounding areas. Thank you for your support on these services and your time this afternoon.
Great. Thank you very much for your testimony. Next, we'll move over to Tony Jackson, calling in from Sitka. Tony, if you can put yourself on the record.
Hello.
Hi, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, this is Tony Jackson. I'm a care provider, retired for my wife. She has a disability, MS, and I'm an advocate for SEL, which of course is Southeast Alaska Independent Living, which of course basically helps people with disabilities and keeps them. Basically what it does is try to keep people in their houses and homes when they do have disabilities and stuff. And so how SEL has helped us and stuff is that over the years they've provided us with wheelchairs, scooters. They've actually recently they got us a chair rail for getting my wife up and down the stairs, which is great for keeping her here in the house. What it does is it's letting her live at home longer so that she doesn't have to move into a nursing home, which keeps us both together. You know, and the other things they've done is they've got a loan closet where recently they got out it's called a sit to stand lift, you know, which helps move my wife around and stuff. So I hear their budgets could be increased by another at least 6%, and so that's why I'm calling, is to urge you guys to increase that budget, because they do a lot of great things for a lot of people. So anyway, thanks for listening.
Great. We appreciate your testimony, Mr. Jackson. Thank you. I don't see any questions. We'll next move over to Mandy Cole, calling in from here in Juneau. And Mandy, if you can put yourself on the record, state your name, your affiliation, and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Mandy Cole, and I'm here representing AWARE, which is a domestic violence sexual assault services organization right here in Juneau. And I'm here today to provide some comments on the proposed budget and talk to you about some of our priorities. We're urging support for the House HSS budget, adding $3.5 million in general funds to replace some temporary federal funds for grants that support our agency and agencies like us in the state. At AWARE, we've been challenged to provide services for the past several years. COVID mitigation strategies included many periods of isolation to keep ourselves safe and to slow the spread of the virus, but that isolation caused problems for our survivors, and those problems are continuing to unfold. In the early days of the pandemic, folks avoided shelter, avoided the hospital, and often avoided reaching out for help because things were so uncertain. But over the past year, the need for services has sharply increased, and we're responding to more and more calls for safety and support with fewer workers in an environment of almost frenzied need. While we at AWARE are primarily concerned with immediate safety, we're also overwhelmed by the need for increased behavioral health services. It's difficult to find openings in community health centers to get new folks into treatment services, and increased funding for behavioral health treatment and recovery grants, as well as the prevention and early intervention grants program, would go a long way in ensuring that we're able to match treatment resources with those needs. And just to be super clear, the need for community behavioral health services doesn't just concern my program participants, but my staff and my children and myself as well. These past few years have been incredibly costly for our community in terms of wellness, and it makes sense to me that we're going to have to pay that tab now to avoid further harm and to be our best Alaskan selves. So thank you for listening, and I appreciate your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. I don't see any questions, so we'll next move over to the room here, and we have Mr. John Sonnen. If you can state your name and your affiliation and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Okay, thank you. Okay, his name is John Sonnen, and I am going to be a sourdough, but from Chautauqua land, Chicago, initially. living on Douglas. I am here to say hello to all you guys and also to argue or petition, I guess, at least petition for the necessity of focusing the budget on the future through education. That includes public broadcasting. I'm not sure where you stand on that right now, but they are always in need of funds, and in Alaska, that is the main source of information for most of us. But the education issue is primary, and for any emergent culture such as ours is, we're unrefined, but still perfecting our union, and that requires the next generation's focus on making things better than they were today, and they always will be if we are emerging, like a flower. I'm trying to think what other issues are critical besides for needs for funds in the budget, besides constricting our proliferation of hardware through ensuring responsible hardware of artillery and guns, ensuring responsible ownership, but that's not a budget issue, really. Could be if you direct funds to proper background checking and the other necessities to make sure that those who obtain control of a gun have responsible ownership, are responsible. I know the influx of federal funding right now has made the governor and his budget proposals probably quite agreeable to most of the, I'm not sure, I haven't looked at it, but to most of the states, and that I want to be sure that we are funding for the cultural welfare instead of the private enterprise. And I think my time is about up. No?
It is.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you listening to me, and I hope you guys have a great afternoon.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sonnen. Sonnen, I don't see any questions of the committee, so thank you for coming in. So next we'll go over to Mr. James Kerr in Petersburg. If you can state your name, your affiliation, and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
My name is James Kerr, and I'm the Chief of Police for the Petersburg Police Department. Petersburg Police Department currently operates one of the community jails for the state. Current funding from Department of Corrections is $173,626 per contract year since 2016. This is only 43% of what it currently costs to operate the Petersburg Community Jail. Since receiving funding cuts in 2016, the Petersburg community taxpayers have been forced to pay $1,041,697 to operate the state's community jail. Petersburg Police Department does not arrest on any municipal codes. Therefore, all bookings into the Petersburg Community Jail are state charges. With the Department of Corrections only providing 43% of funding required to operate Petersburg Community Jail, the other 57% comes from the Petersburg taxpayers. This has resulted in reduced staffing, decreased wages, and the inability to hire and retain qualified personnel. The Department of Corrections Rural Community Jail contracts have specific requirements which are required to be followed. Proper funding should be required since technically providing this service, community jail facilities are an agent of the state. If the community jail contract was adequately funded, Petersburg Police Department could provide proper staffing and increase wages, resulting in the ability to hire and retain qualified personnel. Petersburg Police Department supports additional funding for community jails and funding public radio. Because when you look at the logistics involved in Southeast Alaska living, Petersburg Community Jail and public radio are valuable public safety resources for the state of Alaska and local communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Chief Kerr. Do we have any questions? I see no questions of the committee. I did want to make a note. Public radio is a issue that's come up quite a bit. And I believe, Representative Wold, you've got the subcommittee for that, and I believe you added funds for. Could you just comment on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. We, the Department of Administration had an amendment. Our subcommittee had an amendment for public radio, and I want to say $1.5 million we added to their budget. And I would like to, yes, I'd like to hear more from the people that run public radio. And we didn't have them on the line during the subcommittee, but that was what they requested.
Great, perfect, thank you. I think we've got a few more folks who are going to be calling regarding that, so I just wanted to get that out there. The next person that we've got up is Marilyn Castile, calling in from Dillingham. If you can state your name, your affiliation, and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Marilyn Castile. And first and foremost, I am a tribal member of the Chilion Tribal here in Dillingham, and also have the honors of working on the Chilion Tribal lands. I'm also the executive director for Safe and Fear-Free Environment. I work for men, women, and children who have suffered, are still suffering, or have passed away from domestic violence, sexual assault, and other types of violence. If the state of Alaska did not support shelters all over the state of Alaska, and especially in rural communities like my hometown of Dillingham, Alaska, and Bristol Bay, I believe we would be in worse shape than we currently are. We support many budget items that are included to increase safety and protection for victims of domestic violence and sexual assault, as well as other crimes for 24-hour emergency shelters. And I surely appreciate all the support that shelters have received in the past, and especially the shortfall that we've had with our VOCA funds of the last year. So thank you so much for hearing my testimony.
Great, thank you very much, Ms. Castile. I see no questions, so we'll go ahead and jump over to Cindy Sweat, calling in from Wrangell. If you can state your name, your affiliation, you proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Cindy Sweat. I'm the general manager of KSTK Radio in Wrangell, and I am calling in support of reinstating funding for public radio in the state budget. State stations in Alaska have not received state funding for 3 years now, and this has put some of our stations on a glide path to shutting down our broadcast signals. Eligibility for public stations to receive our federal grants through the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, or CPB, is based on stations receiving annual non-federal funding support. So, for example, our local station here in Wrangell is required to match $250,000 annually in non-federal funding in order to qualify for that CPB grant. And without funding from the state, this means our small rural community, 2,000 population here in Wrangell, Alaska, we've been challenged with raising that $250,000 each year. And after the state dropped funding, we've not been able to meet that benchmark every year, and that has put us in jeopardy of losing our federal CPB funding. And so this is just one station, one example of one community station in our state. And so rural Alaska stations really are at risk of going dark without our state funding. And providing all Alaskans with emergency alert services and keeping Alaskans informed and connected during the pandemic over the last 2 years really does underscore the importance of keeping the stations on the air. thank you for your time, and I appreciate all the work that you do on behalf of all of Alaskans.
And we've got a question from Representative Ortiz.
Hi, Cindy. It's nice to hear your voice today. Can you tell us a little bit more, prior to 3 years ago when the state was making an annual appropriation for public radio, do you know what the statewide appropriation was, how much money it was? Representative Wool just talked about appropriating in the administration budget $1.5 million, and my question is, does the $1.5 million come close to matching what we were previously putting forward at the state level, or does it fall short of that?
You know, unfortunately, I don't have that number in front of me. I do know that our station received $130,000 at one point, and then that was cut in half and then further reduced, and now is at zero. The entire state allotment, I can't comment on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Great. I see no further questions. Thank you very much, Ms. Sweat, for calling in. Next, we've got Erica Paquette, and if you can state your name, your affiliations. Looks like you're calling from Ketchikan.
Hi, my name is Erica Paquette, and I'm the Community Services Director representing Women in Safe Homes in Ketchikan, Alaska. I want to say thank you for hearing our comments. I am calling to support the additional funding from the general fund into the budget for the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault. WISH serves multiple communities across southern Southeast Alaska, from Wrangell and Petersburg down through Hyder. The money that we receive from the council allows us to provide safe shelter, support primary prevention programming in our community, and support prevention programming across other communities, and provide mental health services to children who have been and youth who have been exposed to domestic violence. Our primary prevention programs work to increase protective factors that make youth that have been exposed to violence or have not experienced violence less likely to experience violence over their lifetime. And this funding from the CDVSA is incredibly important to reducing not only violence in our community, but other social issues like substance use, suicide, childhood trauma, and other things. So thank you for consideration on increasing the budget.
Great. Thank you very much. I don't see any questions. So next we'll go over to Eleanor Hewitt, calling from Ketchikan. If you can put yourself on the record.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Hewitt. Everybody calls me Punky, but I'm calling in today to support the SAIL program here in Ketchikan, Southeast, individual living at home. I'm a caregiver for my husband, Stan Hewitt, who is a veteran, and they make it possible for us to stay in our home, and they are taking very good care of us, and I'm very grateful for this program, and I hope that you will consider them in your budget for this coming year. And thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you very much. We got a question from Representative Ortiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hey, very nice to hear your voice today, Punky, and I know I can tell this committee that you're a longstanding community participant, advocate, and we appreciate you coming forward today. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you. Next, we'll go over to Janet Elisovsky, and she's calling in from Cordova. If you can put yourself on the record.
Hi, my name is Janet Elizovsky, and I'm calling from Cordova, and I'm in support of the Independent Living Center of Alaska. I understand that there is only so much money that can be spread across the state to fund these programs, but this program has helped me not only with my late husband, but now with myself being physically disabled, to stay in my home and not be an even larger drain on the state by having to live in assisted living. They have been absolutely wonderful. Cordova's kind of off the record for everything. So in ways we are kind of forgotten community here in the state, unfortunately. But the independent living center lady that I've been dealing with over the years, Kelly Bartlemay, is absolutely wonderful. And I think part of it is the advertisement of these programs in our state, because I'm getting phone calls from people because I've shared my experience with these folks of the things that they have done to make it so I can stay in my home. And please consider giving more to this program because they are absolutely wonderful. And Kelly Bartlemay, if there's anyone out there listening for you, you don't get paid enough, woman. She works so hard for what she does just for me. It's where it's so hard to find help and programs in Cordova that can help us. We're often at the mercy of, okay, well, we will help give you money for this, but you have to find the person to help you do it. Well, this is a program that assists me with items for my home so I can live here, and I'm so grateful for all that they have done. So please consider the Independent Living Center when including them in the budget. Please, thank you very much.
Great, and thank you for calling in. Next up, we have Charles Barker calling in from Kodiak. If you can put yourself on the record, your name, your affiliation, proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Hi, my name is Charles Barker. I'm here advocating for the Independent Living Center. As a volunteer there and as a recipient, it's provided me with a lot of resources to help me get out into the community. I am a wheelchair-confined adult who was diagnosed when I was around 15 or so, and so a long time I didn't really have a way to get around or really an aim because, just finding a job, being physically disabled with my hands not working, it was difficult. But I knew I had to do something, so I needed to have goals. And someone told me about the Independent Living Center, and they helped me get the right waiver I needed to get the services I needed to do things out in the community, rehabilitation, supported living. With their help, they've also helped me figure out how to live on my own, move into my own apartment. I would have never have considered that even being a possibility as a person with a physical disability to be able to live on my own. But they've helped me with so much stuff, and with technology, partnering up with Atlas, and also there's a program called Trail that's through the Independent Living Center where it's going to help people with disabilities get out and do stuff outside, and which is quite needed in Kodiak. I can't express how wonderful the Independent Living Center has been to me and just how wonderful the people working there are. So I hope you consider that, and thank you very much for listening.
Great, and thank you for calling in. I don't see any questions.
Yeah.
Oh, we do have a comment. Representative Josephson?
Charles, was that a Kodiak caller?
Kodiak, correct.
That's all I mean. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next up we'll go to Deb Potter calling from Skagway. If you can state your name, affiliation.
Yeah, my name is Deb Potter. I'm calling from Skagway. I'm actually a new Assembly member, though I'm calling on behalf of myself. And as a new Assembly member, I appreciate short comments. I will try to adhere to that. A lot of people have already spoken on the importance of public radio. I've also been on the board of directors for over a decade for KHNS. So I will kind of echo everything else that everybody else has said about it. Obviously has, especially in pandemics and extreme weather events, provides an invaluable safety service. And so that is exciting to hear that it looks like Representative Wool has a subcommittee that's working on that. So I hope that works out okay. I also want to throw out a reminder of, especially for communities like Skagway and Haines, the importance of a fully funded and functional Alaska Marine Highway. This is at least our second winter in a row where the weather has been too bad for planes to fly to get to Juneau, and we've gone over a month without ferry service, so we've had to contract private ferries, and it's just not okay. We've got to. It's also obviously a safety issue. We've got to be able to get people to hospitals and medical services. I appreciate everybody's time, and thank you.
Great, and thank you, Ms. Potter. Next up, we'll go over to Robert Batty, calling in from Sitka. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Good afternoon. My name is Robert Beatty. I'm the Chief of Police in Sitka, Alaska. Been in law enforcement for the last 36 years. Been a retired Alaska State Trooper and have been a Chief of Police in 4 different locations, currently Sitka. I'd like to thank the committee for allowing me to have the time to speak to you. I would like to recap what Seward, Kodiak, and Petersburg have so eloquently expressed already, and ask the committee to preserve the recommended $4 million increase to the community jails and fully fund it. The services that have been provided by the municipalities have historically been based off somewhat of a skewed formula, what they call man-days, instead of the actual true costs of doing business, such as the buildings, the services, the utilities, the personnel, and whatnot. I would just point out that if the state were to have to provide those same services, it would certainly cost the state more money to, of course, build facilities, and of course the same other things apply, such as utilities, the upkeep, and personnel. So part of the problem is that the communities have been having to supplement the shortfalls of the community jails. And for example, Sitka has been operating at about a $200,000 deficit for the last several years, since about 2016 when the budget was cut. Let's see. Basically, that's about it. I want to keep it fairly short. I do appreciate the subcommittee's recognition of the state shortfalls and on community jails, and thank you all for the hard work that you have in considering these items and the hard discussions that you have. And I guess lastly, I'd also like to, although I called in for community jails, I'd like to throw in some general support of some of the other items I heard others talking about today, and that would be the ferry system is so important for our small communities, the sexual assault awareness, those type of programs, and of course the public radio. I've lived all over the state in a lot of different communities and have participated and actually had need of many of those services. So thank you all very much. I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Beatty. Who is chairing the corrections subcommittee? Was that Representative Edgman? Okay, I think it was it 4 million? Did they add on top of that 4 million? Oh, they didn't. That was the recommendation, was for 4 million. I think it was at least that much, and for some reason I was thinking there might have been some more that was added onto that. Representative Ortiz.
I thought we were talking about
community jails.
Yeah, no, and it was a consistent number that's been going from year to year, and this number didn't increase from past years. I do believe that's true.
Great, thank you. Okay, we'll look into that more. So next up, we have Joanna Geisler calling in from Homer. Ms. Geisler, if you can state your name, your affiliation, and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Okay, thank you. Yes, my name is Joanna Geisler, and I live and work in Homer. I'm here today to ask for your support for the budget amendment that was offered by Representative Josephson for $1.49 million. $586,000 of that would go to Centers for Independent Living across the state, and $912.2 thousand would go to senior grant providers. There are 4 Centers for Independent Living that provide services across Alaska, and I work for the Independent Living Center. I just heard Charles and Janet give their really awesome testimony, and that's great to hear from people who have received services from us. So ILC, as we're often called, has offices in Homer, Soldotna, Seward, and Kodiak, and itinerant services to Cordova and Valdez. All of us centers, again, there's 4, provide services to people and families experiencing disabilities, and last year alone, ILC provided services to about 715 people living in the Gulf Coast region. All of our services through Centers for Independent Living vary based on what the particular needs of the person with the disability are, and you heard a couple of those today. I just have a few more examples just to illustrate how different our various services are. So last year we provided funding for a 1-year-old with a developmental disability and helped her family purchase some physical therapy equipment that could be used at home. We, on the other end of the spectrum, we assisted a 103-year-old veteran living with his 99-year-old wife outside of Anchor Point here on the peninsula to stay at home rather than moving to a nursing home. And in Seward, we helped a 68-year-old gentleman who had recently had a stroke and could not afford all of the housing modifications he needed to safely get in and out of his home. These are only a few examples of services that we do provide across Alaska. Lastly, I would like to say, in partnership with the Veterans Administration, last year ILC proudly worked with 60 different veterans in the Gulf Coast region to stay at home and out of nursing homes. So for these and many, many more reasons, I'm asking for your support for this budget increment, and thanks for your time today.
Great, and thank you for calling in. Next up, we have Ellen Frankenstein calling in from Sitka, and if you can state your name, your affiliation, and proceed with your 2-minute testimony.
Oh, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ellen Frankenstein. I'm calling today to encourage the House Finance Committee to support public broadcasting in the public budget. I've lived in Sitka for 27 years. I've listened to and collaborated with public broadcasting in Alaska, both as an independent filmmaker and more recently with the nonprofit I direct, Art Change Inc., by producing shows for public radio. As you're well aware and have heard already today, Alaskans rely on public radio in a way that's unique. I'm here to ask that the public service stations of Alaska be allocated resources to support their communications and emergency infrastructure. As you know, stations like KCAW serve the area of Southeast Alaska where people depend on the service we provide, or they provide. The station works hard to support public safety and a way of life here, and that funding from the state supports the maintenance of public broadcasting system that people in rural communities depend on. I think you've heard from a lot of other people the same thing, and as you know, oil prices are up and there's money available, and it is needed to support things like public radio. And so please support rural Alaskans and reinstate public broadcasting funding in this coming fiscal year's budget, and all these other things people are talking about. I want to kind of echo what Robert Beatty said, sexual assault, ferries, and all these other good things. And thank you for your service and for your consideration.
Great, and thank you for calling in. Next
No
up,
problem.
Next up, we have Susie Townsley calling in from Seward. If you can state your name, your affiliation.
Hi, thank you. My name is Susie Townsley, and I am calling from Seward with Seward's Safe Harbor Domestic Violence Sexual Assault Program, where I am the program director and lead advocate. We cover in our area Seward, Lowell Point, Bear Creek, Moose Pass, Hope, Cooper Landing, and everything in between. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you in support of House Bills 281 and 282 281 will move additional funding to support multiple communities statewide in our DVSA work. Our program participants face multiple struggles. First and foremost among them lately, and growing in urgency, has been a struggle to find affordable, sustainable, available housing. We understand that this is an issue locally as well as statewide and even nationwide. We look forward to continuing to work with our representatives in the legislature, our partners at the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault, and the ANDVSA, as well as our sister organizations around the state, to continue removing the many barriers that survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault experience all too often, and to empower survivors with access to resources to rebuild their lives with dignity. Thank you so much for continuing to recognize the importance of stable funding for DVSA programs like ours and for your work in the legislature.
Great, thank you for your testimony. And next up, we'll go to Penny Lample, calling in from Kodiak. If you can state your name and your affiliation.
Madam and Mr. Chair and members of the committee, my name is Penny Lample, and I'm from Kodiak, Alaska, and I'm representing the Kodiak Women's Resource and Crisis Center, and I'm calling on the funding that's used for domestic violence and sexual assault. With these funds, our shelter has 25 beds that we help shelter women, children, and people that are directly affected by domestic violence and sexual assault. We do outreach and prevention programs throughout our community and our 6 villages. We also service 6 villages for domestic violence and sexual assault. We have case management to help with non-residential clients and clients that are in the shelter, and it helps them move forward on their own, and we stay with them for a couple years. We help deliver paperwork, food. When the schools are at home and not in the schools, we help deliver the school lunches to the children to make sure that they are fed. We have our own sexual assault exam room on our premises, and this helps us complete confidentiality for our victims of sexual assault. We also do exams for extreme domestic violence, strangulation. We do the pictures for the officers and for the courts. We have our Community Coordinated Response Team, which we call it our CCR team, and that's a team of all of our first responders. We all work together as a team, and I think that this is really important for our community members that we serve. And I want to thank everybody here on the committee for the hard work that they've done and that you keep doing to help keep us funded. Your effort is very much appreciated, and I want to thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Lample. So I don't see any questions from the committee, and that was our last testifier at this time. Public testimony was scheduled from 2 o'clock till 4 o'clock. So we may have some folks that decide to call in the next few minutes. So what we'll do is we'll take an at ease. It's 3:37 right now. We'll come back at 3:55 in about 18 minutes or so. And so we'll take a little break, stretch our legs, and come back in a few minutes. And if we've got anybody, we'll go to them. And if not, then we'll go ahead and gavel out by our scheduled 4 o'clock time. So with that, House Finance will be at ease at 3:37 p.m.
Wow, absolutely unbelievable. Listening to the testimony being given here today, it really, I shouldn't say it's unbelievable, it was expected. The special interest, one after another, all lining up, all pleading with them to increase their budgets, make it higher, give us more. And if you look at the overall budget that they got going out there, it has increased dramatically. They have pulled so much funding out from the state, and through the coronavirus, the infrastructure package that they got $29 billion to spend this year. And that doesn't even include all the oil revenue that they're still collecting. There's still 4 more months on the fiscal year for collecting of taxes before they're done. They already currently have a surplus sitting there of tax revenue. They can pay for this budget 100% without using one dime of the earnings reserve account that is where our PFD comes from. And there's absolutely no reason why they shouldn't be paying us a statutory PFD this year. But you can hear the testimony being given today, and it's definitely give me more. Every single person that is calling in today has specialists paid for, special interest lobbyists that sit down there in Juneau all year long, especially during these 90 to 120 day sessions or longer, depending on the year we're in, if it's an election year or not. Now, the House Coalition here, the ones that are sitting in this room, they presented a bill yesterday to give a $1,300 stimulus check, if you're not aware of that. And that $1,300 stimulus check is supposed to offset the cost of our heating and fuel costs that are now skyrocketing through the roof. 50 cents in just 3 days at the gas pump. I'm glad I was able to catch the last place that still had it at $3.79 last night, because when I drove by there this morning, they were up to $4.29 a gallon. So it literally a 50-cent jump overnight just in paying at the pump. Not to mention what heating fuel is now gone up to. It has also increased at the same exponential rate as regular fuel prices. So don't expect that to be any cheaper or any less. I'm paying $30 more a month right now in just my electric bill within my home. My normal bills would be around $110 at this time of the year. I'm paying $140 instead. That's $30 more a month than what I had previously put into my budget. Same with the gas pump. I am paying so much at the gas pump right now, it has literally eaten all of the profits that I was making. And it's only going downhill from there when you add in the economic costs of what it costs you to buy just consumer goods. Buy yourself bottled water, or putting hamburger into your freezers, or steak, or just meat, potatoes, the rice, all the little fixings that go along with making a good, healthy meal, keeping your kids fed. And you go to the grocery store and you're paying darn near 50% more than you were a year ago for most of the products that you're buying, depending on what it is. And the food cost is just astronomically going through the roof. The price of milk, the price of eggs, everything is just skyrocketing so high. The goods that I buy for my business has seen a 60% jump during this last past year. So what I was paying, say, $100 for here at 1 year ago, I'm now paying $140 to $160 for that same item. It's absolutely astronomical and unbelievable. It's not that it costs them any more to produce than it did a year ago. It's just the fact that the supply and the demand is there's more demand than there is supply, because these Democrat-controlled, left-controlled countries, states, cities, their governments have shut down everything and anything that had to do with keeping our supplies on our shelves. California shut down their ports. That backup that's sitting there with all those cargo ships that are still waiting to be unloaded, that don't have the truck drivers to unload them and deliver them, because the governor there in that state forced them all to get the shot or no job. Or they had them completely shut down because one person there got COVID, so the entire operation got shut down. No one's allowed to work while they defumigate things again. They created this backup, but in places like Florida, who also has a major shipping port that receives everything coming in from 4 countries on that side of the coast, on the East Coast, they don't have the log jams. They don't have the backup of surplus of cargo ships sitting out there. Their problem is when it comes to transporting it and getting it out of their state and distributing it elsewhere within the continental United States. They can't get it there because they got to go through a blue state. And in that blue state, they got things shut down. And it just compounds and compounds over and over and over again. I'm sure us Alaskans have noticed that when you go into places like Walmart here recently, you'll go through and you'll see all the non-perishable items like toys and bicycles and camping gear. And all of those locations are now fully stocked. They are brimming with things that are there. But you go to the grocery shelves, and those grocery shelves are half empty. And what is there has been increased 10 to 20% above the cost of what it was a year ago. It's really killing us all out there. The average for a family of four right now, just in the last past year, it cost you $6,000 more this last past year to survive under Joe Brandon than it ever did underneath Trump. And it's all the Democrats and Joe Brandon's fault this is happening. There is nobody else to blame. Brandon inherited a economy that was booming, astronomically skyrocketing through the roof, and we were energy independent. And in the first 4 days in the office that he was there, he signed all these executive orders. He shut down our energy independence. He handed those over to OPEC and Russia. We're buying 600 million barrels of oil a day from Russia. We're funding the war against the Ukrainian people. And Joe Brandon and his administration, the Democrats down there, Adam Schiff and Pelosi, they all declare they are not going to ramp up our energy production. They are 100% backing the Green New Deal. They are not going to reverse course from where they are already at right now. They openly admitted long before the Ukrainian-Russian war began that they wanted gas prices to go up to $8 a gallon. They wanted us to pay more at the pump. They openly admitted this, and mainstream media didn't flag it or keep promoting it out there when this was announced or when they say things like this. But the alternative media, the 10% out there that's not controlled by the 5 main media corporations out there, that small 10% was flagging the warnings. We were sounding the alarms left and right, trying to get people to wake up and realize what was going on down there in Juneau, or down there in Washington with Biden and his policies. Our own Lisa Murkowski sold us out. She voted to pass Deb Haaland into confirmation process. All they needed at that point was 51% of the vote to bring her on board, and the moment she took office, she outright declared ANWR is no longer on the table. It's completely shut down all mining and oil and reserves. This is all Joe Brandon, his first 4 days in office, through executive orders. And then when she was confirmed, she re-put all of this stuff into writing, stating that you guys are all screwed. So any and all fracking that was being done on federal lands, any new oil developments, anything that had to pass through a federal land, like our Willow project here in Alaska, they shut those projects down. They're not moving anywhere. Alaska could be easily, at this point, if it wasn't for Joe Brandon, putting another 100 to 200,000 barrels of oil through our pipeline a day. 100 to 200,000 barrels a day more than what they are already doing. But thanks to them and their Green New Deal policies, we're going nowhere. We got places like the Ambler Project, rare earth metals that are out there, and we'll add Pebble Mine into the mix there. All of these rare earth metals that can be mined safely, economically, clean, green policy, something that's not being done in the Congo, where they're mining this stuff using slave labor and children to dig out these pits, going for those nickel minerals that are needed to create those batteries, not wearing any safety protective clothing while they're doing it, wading through these water ponds and getting cancerous materials that are constantly infecting them, dying at a very young age. And this is the slave labor that our government is supporting every time they shut down everything here in America. That Europe would not be facing the problem. Ukraine would not be facing Russia invading them if Joe Brandon hadn't done what he did the first 4 days he went into office. He shut down the Keystone Pipeline. He shut down any and all drilling on federal land. He shut down Alaska's ANWR. He shut down the Willow Project. He's now currently working actively to shut down the Ambler Road Project. They shut down the Pebble Mine Project. They completely keep erasing anything that would make sure that America, the USA, is not dependent on foreign countries for our safety and security. Right now, if China goes to war, which it's looking very likely that they will be going after Taiwan here real soon, and I believe it's Taiwan or Beijing, something like that. If China goes to war, which it's looking very likely that they will be going after Taiwan here real soon, and I believe it's Taiwan or Beijing, something like that. If China goes to war, but they're openly looking to yes, Taiwan. They're openly looking to go after them and attack them, no different than what Russia is doing right now with Ukraine. And China's just sitting back right now, playing neutral, not on the U.S.'s side. They're not on Russia's side, so they claim. And they're just actively watching how America reacts to what Russia is doing right now before they begin their own attacks and invasion. They already see how weak-kneed and spineless the president that we currently have in office is. They're just waiting for their opportunity and their chance to take their next step. And it all depends on what they do with Russia. America, the European countries, were also interdependent upon Russia and China right now for our rare earth minerals and our oil supply and stuff like that. That they literally have us over a barrel. They could do whatever they want because they can just shut that supply completely down. And what are we going to do? We don't have the manufacturing here in the U.S. President Trump was trying to bring all of that back in. He was trying to bring those manufacturing jobs back to the United States. That's what the tax cut had done. And what Joe Brandon got booed on when he tried to claim only the 1% and the rest of us got screwed. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm of the rest of them. I didn't get screwed. I actually watched my bank account grow for the first time in many years. Something that I thought was never going to be possible again, to actually put money away. And for the first time that I can remember in my history, in a very long time, I actually put money into my savings account. Unbelievable, because normally it's just hand them out. There was nothing extra. Well, now under Joe Brandon, my savings account is now gone. That money has to be pulled back out again, just trying to keep up with the ever-rising prices of gasoline, heating, food costs that are going out the door, trying to survive during this takeover oligarchy, outright censoring of freedom of speech. Did you know that the State of the Union address that I streamed the other day has been blocked for copyright issues by Facebook? They claim that it was a CBS broadcast, and now there's a Disney copyright against it too. That one just popped up this morning. So now I've got copyright issues with CBS and Disney. Yet this was never streamed from any of them. It was streamed from Fox News. So where are they coming up with these copyright issues? I have absolutely no idea. And me and Fox News, we've got a long local relationship here, at least locally, to where I've never gotten in trouble for streaming anything from them here. And Fox News has kind of worked with me silently, so to speak, just in the fact that, we're not direct partners, but they're not going to censor what I'm restreaming or having to say. That's actually great promotion and for them, because they're getting free advertising. Their material is getting pushed further and further out there beyond where it is currently at right now. I don't see anybody that should ever complain about that. But Facebook, the oligarchy, now my page, within 24 hours I have received 2 different violations on the page. They are one more violation away from demonetizing me to where I won't be able to make any income. It's not like I make any income off of Facebook anyways, but by demonetizing me also means I will never be able to run a sponsored ad. We got elections coming up in Anchorage. I mean, April 5th is just around the corner. We have the opportunity right now. We've got 5 very qualified conservative candidates out there that are running that could easily take over the assembly in Anchorage and reverse the course that it has been on now for darn near half a decade, if not longer, going down the wrong path. And with a conservative governor in place, and then replace the assembly with people that are worth having there, who could ask for anything more? I couldn't. I mean, kind of like a dream come true. I mean, if I was in Anchorage voting on April 5th, I'd be voting for Kevin Cross, Stephanie Taylor, Kathleen Hensley, Liz Valquez, and Randy Schultz. That they would be the ones that I would be voting for there, and making sure that they made it into office, and replacing the ones that are there right now. I mean, Meg Zandatel, Forrest Dunbar, John Weddleton, and Cameron Perez Veridia. I mean, who wants to keep them in the assembly? We know how they vote. They've been pushing the left extremist, racist, very, very, very racist agenda there in the assembly. I mean, they've called out a pastor, not a pastor, but brought up the Holocaust and comparing the homeless camps to caged camps similar to what the Holocaust survivors had to go through. And this was, I believe, Chris Constant who had brought that up. You know, that guy that's now running for a different office position. That's the reason why his name is not on that list I just mentioned. And this is the racist type people that they want to keep pushing into our government to run. Is anybody surprised that, let's say, in Kodiak, Louise Stutes district, that they've made it a very pointed point of pointing out that their district supports Lisa Murkowski, even though there was statewide censorship from the Republican Party against her running in the next election as a Republican? But you can tell where they stand. Louise Stutes, the president of the House coalition, the one that is pushing this very, very destructive agenda here in front of us right now. Their budget has increased so much it's unreal. They refuse to follow the laws. We got like the student base allocation, SBA, the law that is on the books. If they were to follow the law, the student population has dropped by 10%. 10%. That means they should be seeing a 10% reduction in their budget. Instead, they give them what it appears to be, if I've been following the math right for the school district, nearly a $60 million budget increase this year into the K through 12 early education system. $60 million increase. They even increased UAA's budget. It looked bigger than what it should be already. It's just amazing what they are getting away with, and then they're claiming they can't pay us our statutory PFD because they don't have enough money. Well, they've generated so much tax revenue there this year that they have a huge surplus. This is why the House Coalition came out with that $1,300 stimulus check, because they think that surplus now can pay for that, and they want to keep the budget as high as they possibly can using tax revenue, and try to spend all of that tax revenue instead of putting all that surplus away into the CBR and growing it back to the $14 billion where it's supposed to be at. That would stop the sweep every year that's been happening. That's what triggers the sweep, as long as that account doesn't have the money that they're supposed to have in it. Our laws state that they have to sweep all of those accounts back into the CBR budget, and it has to sit there until they reallocate it again and get the 3/4 vote, PCE and all that. But now PCE is not a question anymore, thanks to the Supreme Court creating a dedicated fund, which is also illegal under our Alaska state constitution. There is not supposed to be any dedicated funds out there anywhere, but thanks to the Supreme Court and our corrupt legislators, they made that happen last year. And did we get anything out of it? We got a special budget committee that met prior to the 4th special session that came up with their plan of how to bring the budget back under control so that they were matching what they were spending, and which then they got into that 4th special session, and the Senate sat on their hands. They didn't have a single committee meeting. They didn't bring up any of the bills that were in front of them. They were all sitting in the Senate Finance Committee to be heard. And at the time, Bert Stedman and Click Bishop, who are in charge of the Senate Finance, those that run that committee, they refused to bring a single bill to the table, and they sat on their hands for that last 4th special session, getting paid per diem to do absolutely nothing. Well, the House worked on HB 37 and HB 259, all designed to do nothing more than steal our PFDs and hand it to them, eliminate and completely get rid of the statutory PFD law as if it didn't even exist, so that they can do whatever they want without having that debate to deal with that every single year. They don't want to deal with the debate of our permanent fund dividend. If they get rid of the law that's there that's conflicting with their POMV law, then they don't have to worry about it anymore. And it takes people like you, people that are watching this right now, people that are shared this video, that pick up that telephone when it's time to give testimony on these state and capital budgets and then all these PFD bills. You call in and tell them to stop the theft. The only people I heard call in so far today is everybody that wants to steal the permanent fund dividend and can continue government as usual and keep increasing the budget and no accountability for following the laws, like SBA. 10% decrease in student population should be seeing a 10% decrease in their budget. Instead, they grazed at 40 to 60 million more than what they had gotten the previous year before. Just ignore the $500 million that Anchorage has extra that came from the CARES Act bill. Forget about all the infrastructure money that came in. It's amazing how much stuff they want us to ignore and claim that there's no budget. Oh, they might be back.
I believe we have anybody else online. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out finance for today. And so for tomorrow, for anybody who might be watching, if you'd like to submit public testimony in writing, you can submit that via email at house.finance@akleg.gov. Again, house.finance@akleg.gov. And our next meeting is scheduled for tomorrow, March 4th at 9 a.m. And there we'll hear from Gaffney and Klein on oil and gas competitiveness. And then at 1:30, we'll roll out the new CS, that's the new committee substitute, essentially our version of the FY23 budget with the subcommittee reports rolled into it. And then we'll start public testimony right after that. And during public testimony tomorrow, we'll hear from the following communities. It's Fairbanks, Kenai, Matsu, Anchorage, Bethel, Cordova, Kotzebue, Nome, and Ukqiavik. And we'll also have public testimony on Saturday as well from, I believe, 11 to, I think it was 2 o'clock. And so anyway, tomorrow, 9 a.m. is our next meeting, and we'll be adjourned at 4 p.m. Thank you.
So thank you all who tuned in today, and I am going to put up an image onto the screen. There is going to be public testimony again tomorrow, Friday, March 4th, between 1:30 and 3:30 p.m. Fairbanks, Kenai, Matsu, Anchorage, Bethel, Cordova, Kotzebue, Nome, Uvatovic. This is going to be who is allowed to call in tomorrow. So if you are on that list in the middle there, please, please, please pick up the telephone and call in. All we heard today, Thursday, March 3rd, was special interest, one after another calling in, telling them to give them more and more and more money. You've got this surplus sitting there now. We know you have this surplus sitting in there now. The tax reserves that you have exceeds beyond what the current budget is. It's time for you to refund everything you have taken away from us. Give us that money, that extra surplus you have now. Give it to us. Give it to us. We deserve it. We're government. We work for government. We do government's bidding. Give us more money. Meanwhile, the rest of us Alaskans who are suffering, paying for it at the pump, paying for it at the grocery store, paying for it when we pay our electric bills, finding our cost of living skyrocketing, minimum of $6,000 over this past year for a family of 4. Expect that to double thanks to fuel costs and prices going up there for heating and everything else. Your electric bill is going to jump, your heating bill is going to jump. Everything out there that we pay for is going to skyrocket through the roof. That $6,000 increase this year is going to seem like a drop in the bucket compared to what this next year's roller coaster is going to be like, and the cost of goods that are going to continue to skyrocket going through the roof. And Joe Biden's solution to all of this is keep pushing the Green New Deal. Don't open up the reserves to stop the high costs that are going through the doors. And, oh, by the way, silently tell the CDC to reverse all of their policies because their polling numbers are in a dumpster fire and they're not going to win any elections with the current rate that they're going with the pandemic. Just step after step after step. So I'm going to cut this off right here, and now you can see there up on the screen, public testimony tomorrow, operating budget, mental health budget. Please call in, testify. If your city is listed on that list, please call in and testify. All other communities, please call in and testify on Saturday. Take the time. Pick up the phone. It doesn't take nothing to sit there on hold and listen to what other people are saying while you're waiting for your turn to testify. But if all that calls in and tells them is the special interest to keep handing them more and more money, and us everyday Alaskans who are truly being affected by this don't call in, they're going to think that's what Alaskans want. Those special interests are the only ones whose voices are being heard. It's sad. It really, really is sad to listen to an entire day of just one after another of those who are already collecting all the money coming from that state and capital budget. It's larger than any year prior. And they increased it. It's not a flat budget this year. This is a much larger budget than what they had passed last year. And it's because they have all that extra tax revenue sitting there in their hands. They want it spent. And that extra tax revenue honestly exceeds everything that they have in the budget currently right now. They have a surplus of over $1 billion sitting there in tax revenue. And that $1 billion could easily just be slid over into their CBR savings so that it continues to grow back that to the $12 billion or $14 billion that it's supposed to be at, which until it reaches that amount, our current laws state that they have to trigger the sweep every year that CBR budget, that what the CBR account, what is sitting in it, is below that $12 billion mark. So if they got it back up to $12 billion again, that sweep wouldn't happen. We wouldn't be hearing anybody that is affected by it screaming their heads off. The PCE account never would have became an issue if they actually followed the laws that they have, like the SBA law, student-based allocation, and cut the budget 10% to match the student population that dropped 10%. Instead, they give them a budget increase. They can easily not follow their POMV law this year. There is no reason for them to have to use that to cover, because there is no shortfalls in the budget from tax revenue, so there's no reason to even be using the SB26 law, POMV law. They can easily follow the statutory PFD law. The Permanent Fund Dividend Corporation has given notification that they have far exceeded expectations once again this year. There is over $82.5 billion in the accounts the last time I took a look. There's still 4 more months in the fiscal year to continue to keep generating money, so that $82.5 billion, if it stays on track over the next 4 months, hard to say with Ukraine and the turbulent stock market that we're currently seeing because of it. We could easily be watching that the money that is going into the account start to shrink, not necessarily shrink, but not be at the rapid $1 billion to $2 billion a month record-breaking levels that we saw the year before. This year we're only seeing about $1 billion a month increase. So 4 more months, that's going to be about $4 more billion. Honestly, they could pay back every single Alaskan everything they've stolen, all $14,000. Each and every eligible Alaskan over the past 6 years, and they could also pay us a statutory PFD this year and still not completely spent all the brand new revenue that came into the earnings reserve account made by the corpus this past year. The gains far out surpasses anything that it would cost to pay back what they've stolen and give us our statutory PFD, and still not need a single penny of the ERA this year to pay for the budget, because they got over $1 billion in surplus just in tax revenue alone, so that there's no need to use anything from the ERA to cover any shortfalls. But that's not the way they're going to spin it to it. That's not what the mainstream media is saying. But I sat through those revenue departments meetings. I know what they said during those meetings, and they lied to us all. They completely lied to us all. And when they go out there and say that the money is not there, the Revenue Department for Alaska came out and openly admit there is a surplus sitting there far and beyond anything they ever expected because of the high oil prices. And these high oil prices are expected to stick around for another year. They could easily be here for the next 4 years because Biden and Adam Schiff and Nancy Pelosi, they all openly admitted that they do not want to reverse any of the Green New Deal energy things they have going on that shut down our energy independence 4 days into Biden taking office. They refuse to reverse any of that. They would rather make it so that the European countries are desperately having to buy oil from Russia, and continue to keep funding them. The war on Ukraine is being funded by those European countries and America. The United States is buying 600 million barrels a day. That's, $1 billion a day they're handing Russia to fight this war right now against Ukraine. We're funding their war chest, and they're saying, oh, thank you. You guys are all just sitting back, all putting these light little sanctions on me. Big deal, but I'm still making all that buku bucks coming off of all the oil and gas and natural gas and everything else that I'm shipping off to the European countries and throughout the world to places like here in the USA. That's 600 million barrels a day. This is ironic. And then Joe Biden, his explanation, his way to resolve it is, I'm going to relieve 60 million barrels of our reserves, which is less than 3 days of what the United States uses. Less than 3 days use for the United States, 60 million barrels. And he's expecting that to offset the prices. We've seen it. 50-cent price jump at the pump in just 3 days. 50 cents more at the pump to buy fuel in the last 3 days. 50 cents more to be able to pay for fuel oil per gallon. So that's astronomical when you got a 1,000-gallon fuel tank and you're paying 50 cents more for all of that. That's $500 more than what you paid for it. That you could have paid for it 3 days ago. $500 more than what you could have paid 3 days ago. And our government thinks that handing us a stimulus check, that using all of that extra tax revenue is the way to solve the problem for Alaskans, when the easiest thing for them to do that would really solve the problem for all Alaskans is just return what they've stolen and give us our statutory PFD this year, spend a good portion of the gains that were made this year in the ERA account and give it to us, and use their own tax revenue to pay the state and capital budget like they are supposed to do. And the debate would be over with, it would be done, and they could even follow the law and cut the budget for K through 12 by $130 million. That's one step closer to being to what they actually need if oil drops back down to less than $60 a barrel. And they would still be able to cover the budget with tax revenue and not need a penny from our ERA. Their corrupted, I believe, illegal SB26 POMV law could be completely wiped off of the books. We could constitutionally protect our statutory PFD so that the legislators could never do this again, and move on from there. And then because there is no political will to do it this year because it's an election season, which is why they're trying to push the stimulus check in the House coalition is anyways, they're pushing that stimulus check as a way to buy your vote for this next upcoming election. And don't look at it, don't pretend yourselves this is anything else, but this is a bribe to buy your vote. If they truly wanted to bribe us to buy our vote, they need to follow the law and steal everything that they've stolen from us since day one. Then I'll believe honestly that these legislators care about Alaskans. And until they do that, this is just another attempt to bribe us, to make the sheep believe that they're honest people, when all they are is just a bunch of corrupt crooks sitting down there. Especially in the House coalition, I don't think a single committee that they have down there that is not outright controlled by those that are in the illegal binding caucus House majority coalition. And they have already sold out all their voices and votes to their constituents to be in that binding caucus, to be a yes vote, no matter how bad that budget is. And then we've got the Senate, and in the Senate we've got the Senate Finance, the ones that truly hold the power of the purse strings. I mean, we've got just those small select legislators that control all of that money and where it's going to go, sitting in the House Senate Finance, or in the Senate Finance Committee. And they're the same legislators that have stripped out our PFD year after year after year. It goes through, gets voted on the floor, higher PFD, goes to the Senate Budget Committee and their combination House and Senate committee that meets together, which is made up of the Senate Finance Committee's members that they choose. And of course, they're the most corrupt of all the corrupt that are down there, and they restrip all that stuff back out. They start pulling from this account and that account and this account and that account, all these accounts that never should have money pulled out of in the first place, to pay us a smaller, reduced 1/3 of the statutory PFD. when they could have easily just followed the law and took it directly out of the earnings reserve account and still had billions of dollars sitting there in excess that was made from the earnings from that year, and not even touching into anything of the savings or anything that was not there prior to the next fiscal year. All they're spending is just earnings, the profits, and but they don't want to do that. All right, guys, you guys all have a great afternoon. I am hoping to be able to live stream tomorrow's testimonies. Don't quote me on that. I do got a busy work schedule going on, and going by the time that it's supposed to be on. I think I do got jobs out there I'll be out doing, but I'm hoping to be able to stream that one and on Saturday also. Have yourselves a great day. Go to my website, politidic.com. Click that support button. All proceeds go right back into being able to keep expanding our services. My next big goal is to be able to get enough people as monthly subscribers or monthly donations coming in to be able to start live streaming directly to Rumble. That way, like the State of the Union address will not be censored as it has happened here on Facebook. I won't receive the downgrading of my feeds to all of you because of it. I'm trying to figure out how my State of the Union restreaming violated a CBS copyright when CBS was not even who I had streamed that State of the Union from. And now today I find that there's a Disney copyright that has been slapped against me streaming the State of the Union address. If you can explain that to the world and let me know how that's completely possible, I would love to have a better understanding, but I want to get on platforms that doesn't suppress free speech. Rumble is one of them for the live videos that I like to stream and how I like to stream my information uncut and unfiltered. So to be able to do that, I need to be on there. But just to have an account that would allow 25 people to watch or 50 people to watch at the same time costs $25 a month to be able to make that possible. To be able to have unlimited or over 800 people watching at the exact same time, which periodically, depending on what I'm streaming, that does happen, that's over $400 a month to be able to cover that bill to stream on Rumble. So if you're wondering why I'm not on that platform yet, I just don't have the budget coming in to be able to do that. The restream services that I'm paying for right now to stream from Politidic Unfiltered, YouTube at Politidic, and Twitter at Politidic, those all right now. This restream program is already taken most of the budget, on top of keeping the website up and running, keeping the security certificates current so that I am a trusted and safe site. All these things cost money, and it takes supporters like you to help keep these services being paid for and expanding them even further so that we can get onto censor-free platforms so that we don't have to worry about stuff like this being censored and shut down. You guys all have a great evening, and we'll